Hey guys, in this video the brilliant Mr. B is going to be taking you through how to work out the equation of a circle. Now this is a pretty tricky skill. It's generally right at the end of an exam paper, but if you learn it really well, there aren't too many different ways they can ask it in the exam. In this video there are 15 different examples at 3 different levels for you to work through, and if you want thousands more questions for you to work through, then you can find them over on my website.
We're going to have a look at the equation of a circle, and there's 2 things you need to know to draw a circle. The first thing is the centre of the circle, and the second is how long the radius is, so kind of like how big the circle is, how wide it is. So the first thing, the centre of the circle, if the circle equation is in the format of x squared and y squared, that means the centre of the circle is at 0, 0. So I'm just drawing a blue dot at 0, 0. That's where the centre of the circle is going to be. Now the second thing is how big the radius is. Now that's given to you by the equals number at the end. And so in question 1 we've got 16. Now it doesn't mean that the circle is 16 wide or the radius is 16. The radius is going to be the square root of that number. And the square root of 16 is 4. So the radius of the circle is 4. That means from the centre of the circle to the edge, start at the centre, and look at 1, 2, 3, 4. It's quite a small circle, you can just about see, but the green line, that's how far out the circle is going to come. Now that's from the centre to the edge, so the circle isn't 4 wide, the centre to the edge is 4. It would actually be 8 wide, so the diameter would be twice as big as the radius, and we'd have 4 going the opposite direction as well. And what you want to do at this point is get your compass, put the pointed part of the compass on the centre of the circle, move the pencil out to the length of 4, and then use your compass to draw a circle around. Try not to do this freehand. And now you can see the finished circle. The centre is at the centre of the graph at 0, 0, and you can see from the centre to the edge there should be 4 squares, with the entire width being 8 squares. Moving on to question 2, again the first job is to find the centre, and with x squared and y squared, the centre of the circle, again, will be at 0, 0. So make a mark of that. I've done a little blue dot there. Second thing you need to know is the radius of the circle. And the radius of the circle, it's just the number at the end rooted. So the 169 rooted. And the square root of 169 is 13. So what you want to do from the blue dot is you need to come out 13 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Get your compass, the point of the compass on the blue dot for the centre of the circle, and then the pencil part of the compass at the end of that green line, and draw a circle all the way around. And again, now you can see the full size circle with the centre on 0, 0, and from the centre to any edge, it should be a width of 13 squares. Now, for question 3, it's a little bit more complicated, and you can see now it isn't x squared and y squared. The x squared term has a +1 in there, and the y squared term has a +5. What these do is they change where the centre of the circle is. The centre of the circle is an xy coordinate, and the 1 and the 5 are not xy coordinates, so we're not going to plot it at 1, 5. These are adjusting x and y. So x is having 1 added to it. That means the coordinate of x would actually be at -1. So it's the opposite of the number that's adjusting x. For y, the centre's not at 5 on the y-axis, it's at -5. Again, y does not have the value of 5. Y has a 5 added to it. So we're actually plotting the centre of the circle at -1 on the x-axis and -5 on the y-axis. Just where I'm drawing the blue circle there. Now the radius is the same thing. The radius is a number at the end, which is 36. Remember, it's not exactly 36. We have to square root it first. So the radius is a square root of 36, which is 6. So for the blue dot, we're going to come out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places. Put the metal pointy bit of the compass on the blue dot for the centre. Put the pencil at the end of the green line and draw your circle. And now we can see the full circle with the centre at -1, -5. And then from the centre to any edge, it should be a 6 square length. Question 4. the x, it has 3 added to it, and the y has got 1 taken away. So remember, usually in the normal questions, x and y take the form of 0, 0 for the centre. So if it should be 0, 0, but x is having 3 added to it, then to get back to 0, it'll be a -3. And the same thing from the y. It's not y equals -1. Y is having 1 taken off it. So it'll be the opposite. It's going to be a +1. So it's always the opposite way around of what you'd expect is where the centre of the circle is. And that centre is -3 on the x-axis and +1 on the y-axis. So the centre should be where I'm drawing the blue dot. And again, for the radius, look at the number at the end. It's 121. So the radius is going to be the square root of 121, which is 11. So from the blue dot, go 11 places. It's got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The metal part of the compass on the blue dot, the pencil part on the compass at the end of the green line, and draw a circle. And again, we now have the full circle with a centre at -3, 1, and from the centre to the edge, a distance of 11 squares. Let's look at x and y. X is having 2 subtracted from it, and y is having 3 added to it. So again, if the centre of the circle should be 0, 0, x is having 2 taken away from it, we need to add 2 to get back to that 0 and make up for it. Same thing for the y, it should be 0, it's having 3 added to it, so we need to take away 3 to get back to 0, the centre of the circle. That means that the coordinate for that circle is 2 on the x-axis and -3 on the y-axis, which is where I'm drawing the blue dot. Then looking at how big the circle is, we'll look at the number at the end. It's a 16. So the radius is going to be the square root of that 16, which is 4. Now, why is it always a square root? Well, this is something you have to remember about a circle formula, that the radius is always a square root of that number. Now, we've had a radius of 4 before. We did it for the first question. So from the blue dot, I'm going to come across 4 places. We'll have the same size circle as the first question. Put the point of the compass on the blue dot, the pencil part of the compass at the end of the green line, and draw your circle. And there it is. So now for the median questions, we're going to work backwards. So rather than having the equation of a circle and drawing the circle, we're going to start off with a drawing or a description of the drawing and then move backwards to the equation of the circle. Now, rather than have drawings here, I've just got descriptions, and you will have this sometimes without the diagrams. And what you need to remember, and thinking back to the easy questions, is that the equation of a circle is always going to be x squared plus y squared equals the radius squared. And you might be thinking, oh, why are the brackets there? It's so we can adjust the centre of the circle. So if it's just x squared and y squared, the centre will be at 0, 0. But you can have changes to the x's and y's. So the plus a represents changes on the x-axis. So if you add 5, then the centre will be at -5. If you take away 9, the centre will be at +9. So it's the opposite way around from what you'd expect. And the same thing with the y's. If you add on base, let's say we add 10, the centre of the circle will be at -10 on the y-axis. So for each question, it's simply a matter of copying down that kind of format for the equation. So we're always going to have x squared and y squared, always going to be in this format. And then we need to kind of change the a, the b, and the r into the actual number values that they have. So firstly, looking at the centre is at 5, -3. So we're writing the opposite of those numbers. We don't write in +5, we write in -5. We don't write in -3, we write in +3. So that's the first part of our equation completed. Now the radius is a little bit more complicated. And to find the radius, we need to find the change in x and the change in y. So let's look at the x coordinates we've been given. For the centre, we've got the x coordinate of 5. And for a point on the edge of a circle, we've got the x coordinate of 9. So to draw a triangle with those two values, the distance between 9 and 5 is 4. You could do a takeaway. 9 take away 5 is 4. Then you look at the y coordinates. So we're given -6, a point on the edge of the circle, and -3, the centre of the circle. And we look at the distance between those two. And the distance between -3 and -6 is 3. And don't worry about negative numbers here, just a whole number is going to do. And what we need to do now is construct a triangle out of this. And we can use Pythagoras' theorem to work out how long the radius is going to be. So Pythagoras' theorem, we're going to square 3, to get 9. We're going to square 4 to get 16. We're going to add those together and we get 25. So to finish off Pythagoras' theorem, the square root of 25 is that third side of the triangle, and that corresponds to the radius. And what's the square root of 25? It is 5. Now, you might be tempted to write 5 in for the last value, but have a look again at the pink equation right at the top. At the end, it's r squared. It's not r. So 5 squared would be 25. So we have to write 25 in here. And you might have noticed 25 is what I've written on the hypotenuse of that triangle. I wrote root 25. So when we do our Pythagoras theorem, we don't need to square root your final number because we want a squared version of our in the circle equation anyway. Moving on to question 2, follow the same steps. So the first step, always write down the skeleton of the equation with x squared plus y squared equals something. That's never going to change. And then we have a look at the information we're given to fill in the rest of this. So firstly, for the centre, we're writing the opposite of what we've been given for the centre. So if it's -3, -7, we write in +3, +7. Nice and easy. The complicated bit is working out the radius. So look at the x coordinates. Between 0 and -3, you're going to have a distance of 3. You could write -3 in there, but with square roots, positive and negative numbers are going to give you the same answer. So don't worry about negative numbers here. Then we look at the y coordinates, -8 and -7. Distance between those two numbers is 1. So construct a triangle, and the hypotenuse is going to be the radius of that circle. So using Pythagoras' theorem, 1 squared plus 3 squared is 1 plus 9, which is 10. So the hypotenuse, the radius, is the root of 10. But we don't want the radius, we want the radius squared. So we just write in 10 for the final answer. Question 3, x squared plus y squared equals, never going to change. You're always safe writing that in. So step 1's writing in the skeleton of the equation. Step 2, look at the centre. We have 3, 4. So the opposite of that would be -3, -4. And then step 3, the hard bit, working out the radius. Look at the x coordinates. 0 and 3 have a distance of 3. Look at the y coordinates. 4 and 2 have a distance of 2. Turn it into a triangle and use Pythagoras' theorem. So 2 squared plus 3 squared, that will be 4 plus 9, gives us 13. So the hypotenuse is the square root of 13. Now we could work that out and get a horrible number, but lots of decimal places in that. But luckily we don't need to write in a radius, it's a radius squared. So we can just write down that 13. So then question 4, step 1, write down the skeleton of the question. That's never going to change. Step 2, look at the centre. So we have -9, -9. We're going to write in +9, +9. And step 3, work out the radius. Look at the x coordinates, -14 and -9. They're going to have a distance of 5. Then look at the y coordinates, -7 and -9. They're going to have a distance of 2. Construct your triangle. I'm going to do 2 squared plus 5 squared. That would be 4 plus 25, which is 29. So we write down 29 into the equation, which represents the radius squared. And then moving on to the final question. Step 1, draw the skeleton of the question. Step 2, write in the opposite of the centre. So 7, 9 becomes -7, -9. And then step 3, look at the radius. From 12 to 7, that would be a distance of 5. From 5 to 9, that would be a distance of 4. So using Pythagoras' theorem, we'll have 4 squared plus 5 squared. That would be 16 plus 25, which is 41. So the radius is the square root of 41. The radius squared would be 41. Now, for the hard questions, we're going to find the equation of the tangent to the circle. And we're given the equation of the circle, and we're given a coordinate. And that coordinate is where the tangent touches the circle. Now, we don't have enough information here to write out the equation of the tangent. So what we're going to do is find the equation of a radius. Now, we can have radiuses going in all kinds of directions in the circle. There's an infinite number of radiuses. But there's one specific radius we know about. And this radius, it starts at the centre of the circle, as all radiuses do, at 7, -1. So again, as usual, just the opposite numbers to what's in the equation for the centre. And this radius, it goes to the edge of the circle at 8, 3, where the tangent touches the circle. And if we can find the gradient of this line, then the gradient of the tangent will be linked to it, which we'll have a look at later. So to find the gradient of this line, like with the medium questions, we're going to have a look at the x coordinates. We have 7 and we have 8. And so to get from 7 to 8, we're going to have to add 1. Then we look at the y coordinates. We have -1 and +3. So to get from -1 to 3, we're going to have to add 4. Now in the medium questions, what we did then is we turned it into a triangle to work out the radius. So 4 squared plus 1 squared, which will give you 17. But we already have 17 in the circle equation. So turning it into a triangle is not useful because we already know that we're going to be getting root 17 for the radius. So why are we drawing this? Well, to find the gradient of a line, we use the letter m to represent the gradient as a difference in y over the difference in x. So the gradient of the radius is going to be the y value 4 over the x value 1. So the gradient is 4 divided by 1, which is 4. Now, what we need to do at this point is we're going to rule this off because this gradient is only for the radius. I'm going to find a second gradient now that's for the tangent. So we need to be able to tell the difference between the two and not get confused. For the tangent, all straight lines are in the format, or can be written in the format, y equals mx plus c. And we've already covered the m. The m represents the gradient. The plus c is the y-intercept where the line crosses the y-axis. If you're not familiar with this, go back and watch the video on equation of straight lines to get clear with it. So I'm going to write this down, y equals, but when I come to m, I'm not going to write 4 over 1 because that is the gradient of the radius. The gradient of the tangent is a negative reciprocal of that. So if it's positive, make it negative, change the sign, and then flip the fraction upside down for the reciprocal. 4 over 1 becomes 1 over 4. So we have a brand new gradient for the tangent. And then we add on the c. And again, label this really clearly so we know that what we've just found is for the tangent. Don't get the two gradients mixed up. Now we can't finish here because we need the plus c. We need to know what number that c is. But the equation y equals -1/4 x, which we missed out, let's put that in, plus c, it's got 3 variables, y, x, and c. So we can't solve the equation. But luckily we do actually have values for y and x because this tangent line, it touches the circle. And we've been told where it touches at 8, 3. So at 8, 3, the x coordinate is 8 and the y coordinate is 3. So I'm just going to swap x and y with 8 and 3. So we have y equals -1/4 x plus c. And now we only have one variable in there, the c, and we can solve the equation to work it out. So 3 will be equal to -1/4 times 8. So 1/4 of 8 is 2. So that would be -2 plus c. Then we think to ourselves, well, what's c going to be then? 3 is equal to -2 plus something. What's going to balance the equation? Well, -2 plus 5 will give us 3. So c is equal to 5. Now for our final answer, we're going to go back to our equation. Y is equal to a -1/4 x plus c. I'm going to rub out the plus c, and I'm going to put in the plus 5 instead. We just worked out that c is 5. And if this is a homework for you, or an exam, or a piece of classwork, I'll just write out the equation again. But just to save a bit of space, I'm just going to go back and rub out the plus c and replace it with what I found. So let's try the same thing for question 2. So we want the equation of a tangent. We're going to look at the radius first, and the radius goes from the centre of the circle, -7, -4, to the edge of the circle, -9, -3. So now we're going to work at the gradient of this line, looking at the x coordinates first, and we have -7 and -9. So to get from -7 to -9, we're going to have to take away 2. And this time, I'm going to include the negative numbers. I didn't for the medium questions because it was a length, and you can't have negative lengths, so it didn't matter. But for gradients, you can have negative gradients. So we're going to write -2 there. And we're starting at the centre, and we're finishing at the edge. We're taking away 2. -7, take away 2 is -9. Then we'll look at the y coordinates, -4 and -3. And again, in the same order, start at the centre and end at the edge. -4 up to -3, that's +1. So then when we're writing our gradient, it's going to be the y value, 1, over the x value, -2. And what we can do with the fraction is if one of the numbers is negative, we can just bring it to the outside and make the whole thing be negative. So the gradient is going to be -1/2. Now again, I'm going to label this because we will have a different gradient in a moment. This is for the radius, but we're trying to find out the tangent. And the tangent will be y equals m, and for a tangent, again, the gradient is a negative reciprocal of the radius's gradient. So it's going to be negative. Now the radius is already negative, so that'll make it positive. It'll cancel out. And then for the reciprocal, flip the fraction upside down. So 1/2 becomes 2/1. And then we can actually work that out. 2/1 is 2 divided by 1, which is 2. So the gradient is just 2. We've got y equals m, x plus c. We're going to label what we found. This is for the tangent. And we haven't finished because we need to know what the plus c is. So what do? Well, we have 3 variables, y, x, and c. We need to get rid of 2 of them. And we can do that by substitution. We know that this line has x values of -9 and a y value of -3 when the tangent hits the circle. So let's substitute. So y is going to become -3. X is going to become -9. So y is equal to 2x plus c. That will give us -3 is equal to 2 times 9 is 18, and 2 times -9 will be -18 plus c. So what is c going to be to change -18 into -3 and balance the equation? Well, we're going to have to add 15 to -18 to go up to -3. So if c is 15, we can now write out the equation again, but instead of writing plus c, we can write plus 15. So the answer is y equals 2x plus 15. So let's try the method for question 3. We want the equation of the tangent. We'll look at the radius first, get some more information. The radius goes from the centre, -2, +1, to the edge, 0, -4. So we're going to have a look at the gradient of that. Look at the x coordinates first, from -2 to 0. So from -2 to 0, we are adding 2. Then we look at the y coordinates, 1 and -4. And to get from 1 to -4, we're going to have to take away 5. So the gradient is y over x, that's 5/2. But the y is negative, so we have to make the whole thing negative. The gradient of the tangent is -5/2. Now we could work that out, and it's -2.5 or -2.5, but it would be easier to leave it as it is for the next step. So I'm labeling that this is for the radius, and now I'm going to work out the tangent. The tangent is y equals mx, so for the m, negative reciprocal, already negative, so it'll become positive. I want to flip the fraction upside down, and this is why I didn't work out this was 2.5, because 5/2 now becomes 2/5. If we change it into a mixed number or a decimal, we wouldn't have been able to do that so easily. So y equals 2/5 x plus c. And again, keep on top of your labeling because these two things have different gradients. The radius had a gradient of -5/2, and the tangent has a gradient of +2/5. We haven't finished. We need to find out what c is. So we're substituting our values for 0 and -4 into that equation. Because 0, -4 is where the tangent touches a circle, so we know that those two numbers are associated with a tangent. So the x value is 0, the y value is -4. For the rest of the equation, y is equal to 2/5 of x plus c. So working that out, we have -4 is equal to, and 2/5 times 0 is going to be 0. Anything times 0 is 0, and it's plus c. So what does c need to do to 0 to get us down to -4 and balance the equation? Well, we could take away 4 from 0. 0 take away 4 is -4. So c must be -4. So then we write out the equation again, but rather than writing plus c, we are going to write take away 4. Moving on to question 4, we want to find the equation of the tangent. We'll look at the radius first because we have the information for the radius. The radius goes from the centre, -3, -3, to the edge, -6, -8. So we're going to look at the gradient of that, look at the x coordinates, -3, and -6. It's important we get this the right way around, so we get the right positive and negative numbers here. Start at the centre, end at the edge. So starting at the centre, from -3 to -6, we're going to be taking away 3. Then look at the y coordinates, -3 and -8. Starting at -3, ending at -8, we're going to need to take away 5. That means the gradient is going to be y over x, 5 over 3. And they're both negative, so they'll cancel out and give us a positive number. We have a positive gradient. And let's label it. That is for the radius. So for the tangent, it'll be y is equal to, it'll be the negative reciprocal to the radius's gradient. So if it's positive, it'll become negative, the sign flips, and the fraction flips. 5 over 3 becomes 3 over 5. So that's y equals mx plus c. And label. Again, not our final answer. We need to figure out what c is. We have some values for x and y, and that's a -6 and -8. So the x becomes -6, the y becomes -8. Fill in the rest of the equation. Y is equal to -3/5 x plus c. So let's work this out. -8 is equal to, and it's -3/5 times -6. So 3/5 times 6 will be 18/5, and they're both negative, so that'll cancel out and give us a positive. I'm going to add on c. And for the 18/5, we can do 18 divided by 5. 18 divided by 5 is going to be, you can fit in 3 whole 5s in there, and there'll be 3 left over. 18 divided by 5 is 3 remainder 3. The remainder will be over the denominator. So 18 over 5 is the same as 3 and 3/5. So what can we add on to that to get -8? Well, to find c, we would have to take away 3 and 3/5 to get down to 0, and then take away another 8 to get down to -8. Taking away 3 and taking away 8, we're going to be taking away 11. And don't forget 3/5. C will be equal to -11 and 3/5. So then we can write out the equation again. Y is equal to -3/5 x, and it's going to be taking away 11 and 3/5. So now for the final question, we'll want the equation of the tangent. We'll look at the radius first. The radius goes from the centre, -1, -1, to the edge, -6, +1. We need to find the gradient of this line. So look at the x coordinates, -1 and -6. To go from -1 down to -6, we are going to be taking away 5. Then look at the y coordinates, -1 and +1. To go from -1 up to +1, we're going to be adding 2. So the gradient is going to be, it'll be negative because we've got one negative and one positive value, and it'll be y over x, that'll be 2 over 5. Now we've worked out the gradient of the radius, we'll look at the tangent. The whole equation will be y is equal to, and then m, the gradient. That'll be the negative reciprocal of the radius's gradient. And that's already negative, so it'll become positive for the tangent. And then flip the fraction upside down. 2 over 5 becomes 5 over 2. So it'll be mx plus c. Now we've only got a partial equation for the tangent. We need to work out what c is. If you use the other set of coordinates we had, the -1, -1, that's the centre of the circle, and that's not on the line, so that would not work. It has to be the second set of coordinates, the ones given us in the question, that's specifically talking about the tangent. So we have y is equal to 5 over 2 times x plus c. So we can work this out. 1 is equal to, now 5 over 2 times 6, that's 2.5 times 6, and 2.5 times 6 is going to give us 15. The 6 is a negative, so it'll be a -15. So then we have -15, we're adding on c, we need to get 1. What could c be? Well, c, we're going to have to add on 16 to -15 to get a positive one. So c would be 16. So for our final answer, it would be y is equal to 5 over 2x. Or alternatively, we could turn that into a mixed number. 5 over 2x should be fine, unless you're told to convert it. But 5 over 2 is 2.5x. And it's plus c, which is 16. So y is 2.5x plus 16. Or again, alternatively, y is 5 over 2x plus 16 will be just as good, as long as you've not been told to write it in a specific format.
Ouch! This is why in some videos I have unexplained scratches.